Yeah,
Kind of across from the curling rink.
kind of on the way.
We're back in, we're in session. We are good to start whenever you would like, Chair.
Okay, well, good afternoon. I will call this committee of the whole meeting to order for January the 11th, 2023, and acknowledge that the meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of Tla'amin Nation. Directors, you have an agenda in front of you. I understand delegation 4.1 is not going to appear. Can I please have a motion to adopt the agenda? Director Doubt, Director Brander, thank you. Any discussion? Director Gisborne.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the right time. 8.6, there's an item that's been submitted to the in-camera portion. So I think the 8.6 item should be kind of moved to the in-camera for the discussion. Does that make sense at this time, or when we come to 8.6, we just, it's a question for.
I understand motion 8.6, the corporate officer has advised me that there will be an alternate motion put forward and that we'll ask to move this to an in-camera. Okay.
In that case, no objection to the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the adoption of the hand, Director Elliott? No, I guess not. All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have one delegation, Don Villani, regarding flowers at the mausoleum. Please come up, Mr. Villani. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you for allowing me to sit.
Oh,
Good afternoon. My name is Don Villani. I'm not used to doing this kind of stuff. However, things get in front of you a lot of the time. So, what the hell? I did write down the other thing. A bit of my presentation, and what it has to do is allowing, hopefully, flowers to be laid in front of the glass that is in the mausoleum, which, unbeknown to me until I pulled this bylaw that's dated 2016, is supposedly not allowed. After 2 weeks of a person being entombed, you're not allowed to lay a flower ever again in front of them. Inhuman, just inhuman. So, first of all, I stand to correct on my information that I forwarded, that I stated I had reserved 6 stitches in the mausoleum 10 years ago. That was not the case. I did that 7.5 years ago. It'll be 8 years in May. I stand corrected. The other one is that I stated there were 48 stitches used in the mausoleum at this time. I stand to be corrected or not. There are 45. So those are my corrections. I reserved the 6 niches in 7.5 years ago, not 10 as stated. And my apologies, of course. My parents are resting in the mausoleum as they were members and founders of it. I too, along with my late wife, had 2 spots reserved in the old mausoleum, but as things change, and my late son was about to depart this life, we all decided that we were going to be cremated. That is my family. At that time, I came up here, relinquished my 2 spots that I had reserved, and reserved 6 spots on the glass end area, so that all of our family would eventually be together again. At no given time, as I was purchasing this, was I ever told nor shown that after 2 weeks of a person being entombed, they will not be allowed to lay a flower in front of. Never again. For what reason? To be questioned. Somewhat of an uncharacteristic way where flowers are done as a tribute, as a gesture, all over the world, except supposedly in front of these glass glitches. It's pretty amazing that supposedly bylaw is written in here. As I was purchasing, purchasing, you may say, or reserving these 6 things, I was told then, and I vividly remember, that if you wanted to put a picture inside the glassed area, you would have to purchase and conform with this bylaw a frame and a picture inserted onto the frame from the regional board at a cost of over $300. That was 7.5 years ago, $300. That's what I paid for the first one. To date, there are 45 of these used used glitches, yes. And out of 45, four have the said frames. Everyone else went on their own way, which I have no problem for. As a matter of fact, I bought the one, and the next 2, as I will go on here, I did not. I put a frame and a picture of our own, which in essence is actually better. It characterizes the person behind it. But as I said, at no time was I ever told that I couldn't lay a flower thereafter the 2 weeks, which is unbelievable. So that was in early May of 1974 that I reserved these spots. On May 22nd, my son passed away. Following that, I had my wife with us then. We regularly visited the mausoleum, and we brought flowers periodically. Certain occasions, we did that, and nothing was ever said. Nothing. Everything was fine. At no given time, and I swear to you, no more than 3 sets of flowers laid in front of the glass niches. No more. One would have been mine, 2 others. 2 years ago, my brother passed away. We carried on, my wife and I, visiting and putting flowers. 15 months ago, my wife passed away. I currently keep visiting, as I must, and as I make flowers because I need to. October the 15th was my late wife's first year anniversary of her passing. I took a flower, a vase of flowers, and I laid it in front of her. 4 days later, I went to visit. The flowers had been removed and had been put on the far side of the mausoleum on top of a seating bench that exists on the 4 corners of the mausoleum. I regarded that as disrespectful, not called for, and upsetting. As that went on, I asked for reasons. And I was shown, or not shown, because I pulled it out myself. I was told to pull out the bylaws of the cemeteries. And sure enough, there's actually a paragraph in there that says no allowed flowers beyond the 2 weeks of entombment. surprise to me, is to tell you the truth, this bylaw, at the end of it all here, has a date of 2016, September 22nd, 2016. When I purchased mine in 2014, I'm not even sure we had a bylaw. I was never showed one or told that it was such. So I contacted the people to be, and I was told that having flowers in front there created a safety hazard. I kind of had to shake my head. The vase was on the floor. It wasn't going to fall any further. Nonetheless, accidents do happen. People could trip, I suppose. But then I look outside on the whole cemetery, and I see well over a third of the graves have a vase and flowers protruding out from the grass. And I've never ever seen anybody lay down or fallen down or get hurt over it. Why it has to happen in front of the glass niches, I'll never know. But it may very well do happen. Accidents do happen. Sorry, am I out of time?
You are almost, Mr. Villani, at 20 seconds.
So basically, let me finish quickly. I'll try to.
Thank you.
I was in contact with Mr. Devereux, and we had a very amicable discussion and meeting on site. And we suggested some remedy that could be implemented, inexpensive, that could be implemented and hopefully address their safety agenda, as well as create a solvable solution. The first one that we suggested, was to designate a space in front of the glitches, rope it off, as they do in museums, banks, airports, churches, or whatever, and have flowers in there and keep the people distant from the vases so that they won't trip if they have to, or if there was a case. That was one solution. The other one is, which I think is a very valid one, again, not expensive, is we build a shelf right across the glass niches, 6 inches from the floor, 8 inches, whatever it may want to be. The architect would have to look at that. Foot wide or 8 inches, 10 inches, whatever. On casters. Got to be done on casters so that can be removed if the work has to be done on the glass side. Could be moved, put on the side, and put back thereafter. Now that could be left open as a trough and have glass vases or flowers or whatever inside it. Or you may put a top on top, drill a hole so that the same vases that are used all over the museum, these brass vases, cone shape, can be inserted in there 3/4 of the way, would complement the decor. And sorry, I'm over, am I? So, and anyways, there are different ways, the chairman and fellow members, there are different ways that this can be achieved, I'm sure, in a respectful way, and therefore allow what is done all over the world to be done or to be had in front of the glass niches as well. It's only human, and it's only right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm clear that you lost it. Before you leave, Mr. Villani, there may be questions of directors, so would you mind staying?
So sorry.
We'll open it up to questions of directors around the table or remotely. Am I seeing any hands? I'm not. So thank you.
I have a question for the chair.
Yes, great.
If we were to put forward a motion on this item, it would now be the appropriate time, or should we do a notice of motion, or
I think it could be done now, but you might want to get some clarification from staff before doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
I'd actually like to make a motion,
Okay,
and I would like to refer the suggestions made by Mr. Villani to staff for a report on actions that the regional district might take.
thank you. Seconded Director Brander, discussion on the motion.
That was similar to the motion I was going to put forward. I is also, and I presume the staff report will also include input from the Municipal Insurance Authority, because if there is some concerns about liability or things like that, I assume that that'll be in the staff report as well.
Right.
And
Your question actually was, is this the right time for a motion? You didn't actually make a motion. So that was good for you to do that. And we would expect staff to include all the relevant information in the report. Is there further discussion on this motion? Director Elliott?
Thank you, Chair McCormick. Thank you for the motion. I was prepared to make a motion as well. I wanted to thank Mr. Villani for bringing this to our attention. I think it's a really reasonable request, and I'm in favor of hearing from staff how we could remedy this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's exactly the information that we will seek from staff. I have a quick comment. The cemeteries went through a review process in 2014, which was the year that I was first elected to this board. And as a result of consultation, the people on Texada said that they wanted to be able to have custom grave markers at Woodland Cemetery that were not quite the same as in Cranberry. And after considerable debate, this board or its predecessor granted that okay. So things can happen that will make common sense, and I'm really glad that you brought this issue forward to us.
Thank you. If I may.
This isn't
sorry.
the appropriate time now. You've had your say.
No, I just wanted to say that if there is one of you that has the portfolio of the cemetery, I'd be willing to meet on site and discuss it.
No, we don't have portfolios.
Okay.
Unlike
Okay, sorry about that.
So is there any further discussion? Director Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I just want to say this process is a good process. We provide services and we want to provide services the community wants. And when the services aren't meeting what they would like, it's really important for members of the public like Mr. Villani to come forward to us, speak to us, not be intimidated. We're welcoming that. And we will consider it, which we're going to do, and we will try to find solutions. And there's always other issues we got to take into account, like insurance and all these other things we'll learn about, but we'll do our best. And this is the steps taken are the right ones. So I just want to make that said. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Paul. Okay, now before we vote, is there any further comments? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Belanger.
Thank you for listening to me.
Okay, so I have an apology to make to the committee. I skipped over adoption of the minutes. And so we are now going back to item 3.1, adoption of the minutes. And I would ask if there are any errors or omissions.
I'll move adoption with the.
I'm asking right now if there are errors or omissions. I actually do have a correction in the minutes, and it's on 9.3. Yes, and that is the notice of motion that I made regarding housing. It says underneath that motion carried. And it was not in fact debated, it was only a notice of motion. So just to delete those two, motion carried. Okay, so as corrected, a motion to adopt the minutes, please. Director Gisborne, seconded by Director Brander. Discussion. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're back on track. Unfinished business item 5.1, our board and committee meeting schedule. So you'll recall when this came to committee a month ago, we wanted to have another look at it. And today we are trying the new schedule for the first time. And so there is a motion before us. Is there a mover for this,
Oh,
No.
with putting the option in?
sorry, Chair, that's just for information. The motion has already been moved.
Okay,
Like to adopt, that's the schedule that has been moved. So if there, this is where you might review if you want to make any changes.
does anyone wish to make any changes? I actually would like to put forward a change, and that is that we start hospital district at 3:30 instead of 3:45. The 3:45 was to accommodate me coming off the Texada ferry on a Thursday. There is no 3 o'clock ferry on Wednesdays, and we're here all day anyway. So it would be helpful to start, I think, at 3:30 rather than 3:45 to make sure that it doesn't run into committee of the whole, so we can start on time, et cetera, et cetera. So if someone is interested in putting that forward as an amendment, Director Dowd.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Director Dowd has moved it, seconded. Is there a seconder for that motion, Director Elliott?
Wouldn't that be an amendment? Because we have a motion on the floor?
We don't have.
Oh, okay, sorry, because it's unfinished business. I thought unfinished business means that it's.
You just make,
Yeah.
I could make a comment on why I think that's a good idea.
Yes, please do,
The
Director.
regional hospital district meetings are generally quite short, but it's pretty easy to exceed a 15-minute time frame. We did that today by about 10 minutes. So simply moving it ahead 15 minutes, if it's not going to cause any additional inconvenience, it works. The planning committees, I reviewed the planning committee length of time the planning committees usually take. And the average, the longest one I found was 1 hour and 16 minutes. And the average was half an hour for 2022. So I don't think we'll have problems with the planning committee going over and interfering with that earlier start of the regional hospital district. So it all makes sense to me. Good idea.
Thank you, Director.
Point of order.
Yes, Director Elliott.
So we talked about there being a motion on the floor or not on the floor and making changes and so forth. I thought the purpose of the agenda item was to have a bit of a round table discussion, and I didn't think there was a motion on the floor. Could someone clarify what we're doing here?
Okay, corporate officer.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding, no, there was not a motion on the floor. The motion put forward by Director Dowd is a main motion. So that's to change the start time of the Regional Hospital District Committee of the Whole to 3:30 instead of 3:45 on the day that it's already been approved, which I believe was option 2. So currently there's a main motion on the floor to change the Regional Hospital District Committee of the Whole.
So I think running around with suggested changes through motions is going to make it an extremely awkward conversation when there may be more than one change required. And the point of the roundtable discussion was to maybe learn about what changes might be needed and try to come up with motions that are already talked about rather than one-offing them. So we're back to the process that landed us here in the first place, and that is lack of discussion is making it hard for us to put forward the very best scenario.
Thank you, Director Elliott. At the committee meeting in December, we approved option 2 as a schedule that would move forward, and today's opportunity for review is merely to tweak it as required. So,
yeah, I'm speaking to process.
okay.
I don't think the process we're using is going to do a good job of this, is my point. I don't think it was a good job in the first place, and I'd like to do it differently this time.
Thank you. No, just subsequent motions may come up, but the motion on the floor right now is to change the start time of the Regional Hospital District meetings, Committee of the Whole meetings. So is there further discussion on that? Okay, Director Gisborne.
So the motion on the floor right now is to adjust the Regional Hospital District meeting Committee of the Whole to 3:30 rather than 3:45. That's the motion, right? And therefore, that's the only item that's really up for discussion right now. Not Planning Committee, not Finance Committee, not board, not anything else, just Regional Hospital District meeting, right?
The start of their Committee of the Whole meeting, correct?
I completely concur with Director Elliott in the way that this process is just boggling my mind. Right now, the item before us is when does the Regional Hospital District Committee of the Whole meeting start? The Regional Hospital District is actually a separate entity and includes Tla'amin Nation. We should have had that discussion about when Regional Hospital District starts at the Regional Hospital District meeting that we just had, where we had a Tla'amin representative here. I think that would have been more appropriate, but this comes to the point I made when back in December. We are consistently insisting that a motion be on the floor in order to have a discussion.
That is the way we do.
Ellie Mina has said that that's not a good way to do things, but yet we're doing it. We're putting the cart before the horse, and then we run around in circles trying to figure out what actually works before we've identified the problem.
Director Gisborne, after we have had a vote on the motion to move the committee of the whole regional hospital district up, then we can have whatever motions come next, whether from you or Director Elliott or anyone else who would like to make those motions. But right now, we are talking about the start time, the Regional Hospital District Committee of the Whole. So is there further discussion on this motion?
Yes.
Okay, Director Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about Wednesday being the day that we move forward with all of our meetings. And so I'm wondering if we shouldn't postpone this motion until we've had a discussion about whether Wednesday is going to work at all. So I think that trying to decide about the hospital board meeting, if we end up moving the date, is maybe I think we're premature is all. I think you're going to have to redo this conversation in a little while. That's all. So my suggestion would be to postpone this motion until we've had an opportunity to discuss what is problematic about the schedule overall, so that if we identify the fact that maybe Wednesday isn't the best day, that we could then look at what might be appropriate for a different day if that's where we end up going.
Okay, and once we conclude debate on consideration of this motion, then we can move to whichever motions you would like. You've already spoken.
Yes, I'm suggesting we postpone this motion. I'd like to move that we postpone this motion.
Is there a seconder for postponing the motion? Yeah, Director Gisborne, you're seconding that motion?
I'll second it, yeah.
Okay, so discussion on postponement? Okay, debate on postponing this decision. Director Fall.
Just a question through the chair, if I might, and again, it's a kind of process. If this passed, or sorry, if it didn't pass, but we passed the original motion, would it not still be possible that if something else changed that affected it, we could reconsider at the same meeting?
Yeah.
Put it back on the table?
That's possible. Dr. you have a comment?
Well, currently it's just to change the time of the meeting, but if you guys change the date, this would follow the change of the date of all the other meetings as well. But whichever way you got the membership wants to deal with it will work. But
well, let's conclude debate. Right now, there is a motion to postpone. I'll speak against postponing it because I think that both the Regional Hospital District Committee of the Whole and the Regional District Committee of the Whole meetings need to be given their full, opportunity for full discussion. And sometimes I feel we hurry through the Regional Hospital District debate to get finished in time for Committee of the Whole. So I don't want that to happen. And that's why I'm not in favor of postponing it. Let's move the time 15 minutes earlier to give more time for both committees. And then if we choose to do something else and choose a different date or whatever we choose to do, we can, as a board, make that decision subsequently. So further discussion on the motion to postpone this decision. Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, I'm seeing 2 hands. All right. Any opposed? All right. The motion is not carried. So back to the main motion, which is to change the start time of the Regional Hospital District Committee of the Whole to 3:30. Is there further discussion on this motion? Director Gisborne?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. Maybe it's a question of parliamentary privilege, because I'm confused, and hopefully the corporate officer can help me. So Ellie Mina has said there is a myth that no discussion of an issue can take place until a motion is on the floor. What I'm hearing is that's not how we do things here. We insist that a motion be on the floor. Is there a portion in our board procedure bylaw that states that we must have a motion on the floor in order to have a discussion? That's where I'm hearing it's like that's kind of what we do, but is that what we do on paper, or is that just kind of what we do?
All right, well, I see both of our staff looking for an answer here.
I do believe that under rules of debate in our procedure bylaw, it does outline that we, so it says section 4.45, a motion must be moved or seconded before being debated. Discussion of any subject is permitted only with reference to a pending motion. Once the chair has stated the question, the motion is on the floor. However, when necessary, a motion can be prefaced with a few words of explanation, which must not become a speech.
So, okay, that helps clarify. So that's 4.45. So discussion of any subject is permitted only with reference to a pending motion. So does that mean the motion has to be made, or that the motion is, say, coming up? We can have a discussion before we have a motion on the floor.
Corporate Officer?
Well, thank you through the chair. At the time, I believe that was the intention, although these rules are in place for, these are your rules to govern your meetings. So if there is consensus that you want to take a different process, that would be allowed. But right here, that's how it's outlined in the procedure bylaw.
Hey, Director Doe.
I'd like to actually speak on the motion. Well, the motion we have in front of us is to change the time of day of the regional hospital district meeting. It makes sense because the change, if it's the only change to the times, would mean that there is more time to do the business of the regional hospital district, which on regular occasions extends to more than 15 minutes. So I think passing the motion is a reasonable thing to do. If others are unhappy with the days when we have the meetings or the times that other meetings are proposed, they can make a motion and we can discuss it and we can come to a conclusion on what it is. But at some point, we need to get ourselves beyond having an interesting discussion on parliamentary procedure and try to set the time for the meetings that we're having through the next year. So I'm in favor of this motion.
Thank you very much, Director Doe. So I'm going to call for a vote on this motion. All in favor? Any opposed? You're in favor.
I'm in favor, yeah.
Good, thank you. Carried unanimous. All right. Is there anything if anyone wishes to raise at this time? So seeing what am I missing? Director Elliott. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the reason I was concerned about the Wednesdays is because I normally have meetings every second and third Wednesday of the month, right around the dinner hour. And so it didn't happen this month, so I'm not in conflict today. But going forward, I would have the Western Forest Products Community Advisory Group meetings happen on the second Wednesday of every month, and my board meetings for another board I sit on are on the third Wednesdays of every month. So we could move to either a first Wednesday or a last Wednesday, but the two middle Wednesdays do provide conflicts with my other work. So I was wanting to propose a different day or to move it from the Wednesday that I have conflicts with. But I don't know what's ideally a good day for everybody, only that I have a conflict on that one.
Thank you, Director Elliott. Director Doe.
Yeah, so I find myself repeating myself from the several previous debates we've had on the same topic. And when I went through all of the options quite carefully that we had in the report. The options that had meetings on Tuesday, option number 1, had a large number of conflicts, direct time conflicts with regular meetings of city council. City council has to be my priority. That's where I was elected to. If there is a conflict for 2 meetings happening at the same time, I have to go to the city meeting. That would mean that I could not attend the regional district meeting. I looked through all of the options in option 1, and there were a significant number of conflicts where it meant that I would have to choose one local government over another. I looked at option 2 and found that there were no conflicts with city business I had or commitments to other portfolio commitments that I had with city council. Perfectly for me. I looked at option number 3. Again, option number 3 had direct conflicts with city council meetings. So to me, and what I've said, I think anybody who would listen, was that any Wednesday works for me. Not necessarily the Wednesday we picked, but any Wednesday generally will lead to a situation where I'm not in conflict. So that's my 2 bits worth. I'd like to set when our meetings are, so we know when we're going to be here and we can talk about business.
Thank you, Director Dowd. Director Brander.
Thanks, Chair. Director Elliott mentioned the Wednesday evening commitment. I just want to say I'm on the same committee that she's talking about. The second, it's not a direct conflict. It's a potential conflict if the committee as a whole runs long. And that is the Stillwater Ag. And while it's very important, and I hope to be able to attend, the committee of the whole takes priority. So over any outside committees. So it will be a long day for Director Elliott and myself, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I know the staff has spent a lot of time looking at schedules, looking at council schedules, looking at our individual schedules. And while it's going to be impossible to find a perfect solution, I really think option 2 seems to be pretty good, and it's at least worth giving a shot. And when we get to those times when, especially with the finance committee, when we see, grant applications coming in and numerous delegations, I think there are ways we can potentially deal with it by adding another meeting to the schedule that month or those 2 months out of the year. So as of right now, I am still going to with an open mind and listening to the comments made everywhere, but I'm willing to give option 2 a shot.
Thank you, Director Brander. Now, we do not have a motion on the floor. I would remind directors of that. And so we should probably move on in the agenda unless there is a motion forthcoming. Director Gisborne.
Am I allowed?
Director Elliott.
Am I allowed to speak to this matter?
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. What we heard last month is that some directors are willing to try it. We have trying it right now. We started this morning at 10:30. Then we had our second meeting, finance, at 1 o'clock, and then regional hospital district at 3:45, and then now we're moving into committee of the whole. It's a bit of a long day. Part of the process for myself attending meetings is I go through the agenda and I really think about the matters on the agenda the day before. It really gets into my brain, a little brain worm. When all of our business for the entire month is occurring on one day, the day before for me is exhausting mentally. Some nights with looking after the family can be long. Now that we're at 4:30, we're starting to get into the committee of the whole items. I'm feeling pretty tired. Hopefully I can still be pleasant. I would like to continue. But this process, when we pick our meetings, we should be building consensus. That should be the goal. And I hear the concerns of, well, we've got other meeting schedules and other meeting times, and there's all different area associations and all kinds of stuff going on. But the regional district is the senior level government. It goes province, regional district, municipality, area association, so on and so forth. If we're only showing up in this room to meet 2 days out of the month, I don't think that's good team building. I think we need to be meeting more frequently, but not for such long periods where we're running into exhaustion. I expressed concern in December that if we're not able to have the discussion here, then it's most likely that the discussion is going to happen somewhere else. And that is still my concern, because it is important that the public be part of that process. I don't want to have a meeting where we're not able to discuss it and then go home and have a whole thread of emails between directors about what their preferences are. I want it to happen here. But that's where I think we're having a problem. And it's not just about our meeting schedules. It's about a process, and it stems into other decision making. So that's where I'm just one director. That's what I'm speaking to, and thank you for giving me the time to speak to this item and express my frustration with this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. Now, we had this discussion in December, and unless someone wishes to make a motion and put a motion on the floor for debate, then I suggest that we move on. Who's
Director Elliott, I'd like to make a motion.
okay? Director Elliott.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Of course I am, because I keep coughing and I don't want to cough in the microphone. So yes, I would like a motion, and I'd like to speak to that motion right after I make it. I move that we shift the main Wednesday, if we're going to stick with a one-day approach, to the first Wednesday of every month rather than the second. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Second.
Thank you. So I respectfully disagree with Director Brandner, because the second Wednesday of the month is the only CAG group meeting as well. They put considerable planning into their meeting, including menu planning. So they deserve some certainty as to whether 2 of the members are going to show up or not. They purchase meals for those meetings, and to just not be able to give them an answer as to whether you're going to make it or not, depending on how committee of the whole goes, is, in my opinion, not good performance by our local governments. And so I suggest we not have this standing conflict between those 2 orders, duties that we have as local government peoples. And so I've heard from Director Doubt that any Wednesday works for him. And that's the first Wednesday of the month would not have any conflicts for me, and I haven't heard of any from anybody else. And so I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference to our business, whether it's the first or the second. So I think the first Wednesday would work better.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Elliott. I'm not seeing any hands up, so I would just like to comment myself that the only Wednesday of the month that I do have a commitment is actually the first Wednesday, and that is with the Texada group that I choose to participate in. So now, Director Brander, you haven't spoken on this motion, so let's get you next.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if staff had any comments about moving to the first Wednesday of the month. I don't know how that will impact things, having it be so close to the board meeting from the previous month could cause challenges.
CAO or corporate officer?
I was just going to review for conflicts. We would organize our work plan around where the committee wanted to meet, when the committees wanted to meet. I'm not sure if there's an internal conflict with anything else right now, but maybe the CAO has further comments on that.
CAO?
Through the chair, no, I think it's all a matter of work planning and scheduling. So as long as there's no conflicts there, then it might be a doable thing. But my only concern is the turnaround time.
Between the board meeting and the
And then the next
and then the
agenda.
next round of committee meetings. Yeah, we'd be asking for agendas before the board meeting was even done. So, okay, on the speakers list, Director Dowd is next, then Director Gisborne.
So I just took a quick look at the schedule. There are no direct conflicts that I'm aware of if we move it to the first Wednesday of the month. The first Tuesday and the first Thursday of each month are city council meetings. So, but those are not direct conflicts. That simply means that Councillor Elliott and I, instead of having 4 meetings to prepare for on the Wednesday, we will have 6 meetings to prepare for a week at a minimum. But I'm willing to do that if it works. As to the length of time between board meetings and the committee of the whole meetings, I think that might be possible to rearrange that by moving the board meeting, but I don't want to add complication. But I'm disposed to vote in favor of this if it will get us towards setting a meeting schedule.
Comment from our corporate officer.
Just, I've also reviewed and haven't seen anything, but I may make a suggestion that you would keep February at the same time. Instead of moving it, because it's currently on a Thursday and that's following 2 strategic planning sessions. And I think that there's travel that has been arranged for certain directors to come. So aside from February being on that Thursday, unless you wanted to switch it, but that would be my suggestion. There was an anomaly with that week.
Okay, further discussion on the shift to the first Wednesday. Director Gisborne, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I recall that in December, I had put forward the idea of the first Wednesday, and maybe that could potentially work for people. Now I'm hearing that the first Wednesday can work for people's schedule, which is a good thing. So there could be some challenges with having 4 meetings on one day, which I've expressed. And if it's taking place on the first Wednesday, I'm taking a look at our calendar, and it looks like if we're going to get the agendas a week before our meeting, then there might be some cases where we get the agenda before we have our board meeting. Not sure if that can cause some issues. What I think might be a good option, since the first Wednesday and the second Wednesday seem to work for people, what is the idea? Or is there any appetite for splitting the meetings up for the first and second Wednesday so that we don't run into making decisions by exhaustion? As in, right now it's on the second Wednesday, the motion is to have it all move to the first Wednesday. And I'm wondering, what if we go first Wednesday, second Wednesday, so that we don't run into this potential of meeting by exhaustion? So I'm just curious to hear what the other members of the Assembly think about that idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. I'm looking around for raised hands. Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm willing to give this a try, and I understand there's concerns with some conflict for Director McCormick, but on the balance, maybe there is no perfect solution, as I've tried to articulate before, and with my email of the millions of possibilities. I would like to say I'm open to try. We can always review it in the future. I would like to move an amendment, though, in relation to what the comments by our corporate officer, and I'll move the amendment is to add something like starting in March 2023. And the reason for that, if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Director Paul.
Thank you, and that's because of the travel. So for the strategic planning, works quite well for me to come up, and I can go to all 3 meetings, and the 2 meetings, the strategic planning plus the finance and committee of the whole the next day, and then go back. And I've already started making travel arrangements and planning my schedule around that. So I would prefer that stays alone, and we start this in March, if that's okay with the board.
The amendment is on the table to start this change in March. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none,
See Director Elliott.
Director Elliott.
Thank you. Apparently, my hands aren't seen easily. So I wanted to comment on Director Gisborne's thoughts. There would not be a conflict on the second Wednesday if things all started and ended a little earlier. And if we were to run meetings on 2 Wednesdays of the month instead of all on one, we could start all of them sort of midday and have none of them be too early or too late. That might be a little more comfortable for some people. But if that's not the will of the board, then I'm in favor of the motion that we currently have on the floor.
Thank you, Director Elliott. Am I seeing any further hands?
So, Director Lennox.
Okay, Director Lennox, it's hard to see you. That may
Yeah,
be-
that's not common. That's not common for me that it's hard to see me, but you know, I'm listening to
blurry
everybody
on our
and
screen. Thank you.
you know,
Go ahead.
appreciate everybody's comments. You know, I'm the new guy and I've had to adapt already here to a big change from the previous kind of methodology. You know, the amendment makes sense to me to wait until March. We said we'd give it a couple of months try here, and that's also kind of what I've planned for. And you know, I might as well add, speaking to the splitting it into another Wednesday, that has major impacts on people like myself and employers. You know, it's just adding to the mayhem. So, you know, we said we give it a shot. These are long days, but guess what? We all have long days. You have directors that have other meetings to go to. We have people that are working. So, I mean, at what point do we just say, okay, let's try something here and then reassess? And you know, I think for me, that's where my head's at.
Thank you, Director Lennox. Is there anything further on the amendment? Seeing none, we are going to vote on the amendment to start this in March. All in favor? Any opposed? The amendment is carried. So the main motion as amended is to shift to the first Wednesday of the month, starting in March. Is there further discussion on this? I actually have a question, and it would be to staff. Because of the close proximity then of the board meeting to the committee meetings, could we not move the board meeting to the third week of the month instead of the last? And that would then mean that there would be sort of 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. It would give staff a bit of a reasonable time to get things sorted out instead of trying to do everything all at the same time. Is there a comment from?
Through the chair, that would allow us to, I was sitting here a little concerned that I might not be able to get the committee agendas out on a regional board meeting day. So that would allow more time between the two meetings. That would, but if it was the desire to keep it as it is, we could work it.
Okay. So yeah, CAO.
Through the chair, I'm going to suggest to the corporate officer that staff give it a shot and work through it. And we'll come back to you if we have major conflicts with doing what is currently proposed on the table. And if there is, then we will make a suggestion to you to possibly move the board meeting date.
Right.
Currently.
Okay, so is there any further discussion then on the main motion as amended to move to the first Wednesday of the month? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Okay. So moving on, there are 3 items of correspondence. Is there any business arising from any of these? Seeing no hands, we will move on to reports. 8.1, the strategic planning report. And I know I, for one, really appreciate getting these. So there is a motion there that we received, the 3rd quarter strategic plan progress report. Director Doubt, thank you. Seconded by Director Paul, thank you. Discussion. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two questions regarding this, and I always appreciate getting these. They're good to really get an overview and snapshot of where we're at. Some questions. So on page 65, there's an item for potential acquisition of Spring Bay Park, which is a Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure road allowance. So there's a I guess that's some communication between Mr. Devereaux and Moti. I don't know if Mr. Devereaux's on the call, but if through the chair, I have a question of whether we've heard anything back from them or if it's just a waiting game at this point.
And Mr. Devereaux is here, so welcome, Mr. Devereaux.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, yes, I've been in contact with Moti, their development permit people in Nanaimo. And it is now just a waiting game with them. So we've gone through all the hoops and just waiting for a reply from them. I did shake the tree a little bit and send them an inquiry note about 2 weeks ago, but I haven't heard anything back yet.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And if I may, I have a second question, which may be for Ms. Rodden, Planning Services. And I bring this up each time, and this time's more of a comment. So Ms. Rodden may have comments on it. It's related on page 117, there's the Parks and Green Space planning. And I often bring this up because it's a high priority on our strategic planning. And there's been progress on it, which is great. There's been some information, community consultation, and so on. And I guess I don't know if there's any information that Ms. Rodden might be able to provide on the next steps of advancing this kind of strategy.
Thank you, Director Ball. Ms. Rodden.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, yeah, this progress is this project is well underway. Currently, the consultants at Lees and Associates are analyzing all the feedback received at the open houses that were held in November and analyzing the results of the survey. And we had over 350 people participate in the survey, so it was a good response rate. And I anticipate in the next month, we're probably going to receive a summary of the feedback, and that will be uploaded to the website. And the project is on track. There'll be a draft strategy presented to the community in March of 2023. And then the full strategy should come forward to the board in May of this year.
Great. Thank you very much. That's excellent to hear.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple of questions, and the first one is on page 17 of the report, and I believe it's to Ms. Greenan, and that is with the motion that the board approve a grant of $20,000 to the Texade Island Nonprofit Seniors Housing Society from the Social Planning Service in January of 2023. And so my question is, what has to happen now for that funding to go forward? Ms. Greenan.
Oh, thank you. Through the chair. I've submitted the letter for approval. So once that's approved, then the funding should be paid out. So it's planned to be paid out this month.
All right. I'm not sure what I don't think I quite understand the letter of approval.
Oh, just we need to have the CAO sign the letter, and then the payment will be sent out.
Okay. All right. Because the board has already debated it. So okay. Thank you. I have actually three questions altogether. The third one is on page 49 of the report. And that is similar to a question that I asked at Finance Committee, and it's regarding the Texada Airport and the hangar development. Because there is a lease renewal situation that has been long outstanding and a long wait list for new hangars, and I understand there's ALR issues, et cetera, but when, is this going to be acted upon sometime soon? And the hangar development on page 49, CAO.
Through the chair. I think it's a little bit premature and unfair for the new asset manager to be answering that, but it will be in the 2023 plan.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is on page 62 of the report, and it's with regard to the electric vehicle charging stations. And I'm just wondering, the motion was that staff seek grant funding opportunities to install the 2 stations. And I'm just wondering if there's been any progress. CAO?
Through the chair, as you recall, we did lose our asset manager some time back. I believe it was in June of last year, and we had to scale back our priorities. And this was one of the ones that had to take a back seat in favor of some of the other things. So again, we will be putting this forward into the 2023 work plan now that we do have a new asset manager on board.
Okay, thank you. That is all of my questions. Is there any further questions of corrections regarding the strategic planning? Director Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge that this report is an amazing educational document for newcomers such as myself. I specifically wanted to ask on page 11 under economic development or economic enhancement, I guess the title is, it talks about an economic development for defining economic development and developing an economic development strategy, and that there were workshops and so forth. And then as next steps, there's nothing there. Could someone update me a little bit on what happened?
CAO?
Through the chair. The regional district held a workshop with Gordon McIntosh, and he proposed a number of actionable items. And we got through the workshop, and then there was some actionable items that would require meeting with the city or city representatives at the political level. However, we were then entering into a election year, and it was put on the back burner for that reason, because we didn't want to politicize any of the work going forward. So that's where we're at right now. I suspect that conversation will resurface at the strategic planning session. And if not, we do have some actionable items to carry forward on at the board's desire.
Through the chair,
go ahead.
Could you refresh our memory and provide that information to us at the strategic planning, please? Just because I should have went, but I didn't. And I like that the next steps are to get together with the city. So that's, and I'd like more information and to have it inform the strategic planning. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah, okay, getting nods. Further questions, committee members? Seeing no hands, we will vote. All in favor of the motion to proceed. Any opposed? The motion is carried unanimously. All right, item 8.2, the Provincial Community Wood Stove Reduction Program for 2022 and 23 program outline. And there's a 2-part motion in our agenda. Is there a mover for this recommendation?
So moved.
Director Ball, thank you. Seconded by Director Brander. Discussion. Well, I'll just comment by saying I think it's a really good program, and the more we can do to provide clean air. I know I often hear complaints from people on Texada when it's winter and people are using their wood stoves. So things that we can do that will make the air cleaner for people, I think is a good thing. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, we are now on to what are we on? 8.3, the associate member liability insurance for the Knuckleheads Winter Recreation Association. And this is a 1, 2, 3, 4-part single motion. Director Brander?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Recommendation is moved, seconded by Director Tout. Discussion. Director Brander?
The Knuckleheads Winter Recreation Association does a great job. It appears by reading the report that it was just an oversight, so we just reapprove it and move on.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. The Bonanza Ballfield Rotary Gazebo, and there is a recommendation here, which I invite someone to put forward. Director Paul, thank you, and Director Gisborne, thank you. I can comment briefly to say I support the recommendation. The Texada Recreation Commission did a bit of a survey, an informal survey about a year ago regarding the 2 ball fields and future uses. And one of the things that came back loud and clear was the need for a covered gathering space in Venanda at the ball field. And so this is a very welcome item, and certainly I would thank the Rotary Club for bringing this forward. It will be much appreciated if it is supported. Further discussion. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add to that and say, we're getting volunteers. Rotary are volunteering to build a shelter estimated value $25,000. That will provide really good space. We live in a rainy climate. People will be happy to stay out of the rain, I'm quite sure, or out of the sun in the summer. And I also appreciate the work done by staff on the asset management side, because even though we get something for free, there is a cost for us to maintain it, and it's very modest, $850 per year that we have to save for replacement and maintenance and so on. I think that's due diligence to get those numbers. We know what it is, but it's very low for getting something that's actually a really good asset for the community. I think it's a great thing, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Further discussion on this item? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. 8.5 is the proposed civic addressing regulatory bylaw 55A/2023 for electoral areas A through D. There is a recommendation in our agenda. Is there a mover for this recommendation? Director Brander, seconded by, is there a seconder for this motion? Director Dowd, thank you. Discussion. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carries. So now we are on to item 8.6, and I understand an alternative motion to what is in our agenda is being put forward, and corporate officer is going to put that on the screen.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little confused, but that's not new.
I've been advised that the motion in the printed agenda is not the motion that staff are putting forward. They're putting forward an alternate motion, and I believe that that will go onto our screen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. At the time of writing this report, we had not received a submission from Director Gisborne, so staff worked with Director Gisborne this week to propose this alternate motion, which I will share once I can make Zoom work for me.
Yeah, I'll speak very briefly.
Well, we have to have a mover and a seconder for the motion, but we haven't seen it yet. So just hang on. You can be first on the speakers list. There we go. Okay, that the committee consider a submission by Director Gisborne for the position of alternate Director Electoral Area B that has been approved in writing by two electors in Area B during the in-camera portion of this meeting. So basically is to move this discussion to in-camera. And you're moving this recommendation?
You'll move it.
Okay, is there a seconder for this recommendation? Okay, Director Elliott, I think I saw you first. So discussion. Director Gisborne.
I'll be quick. Yeah, I'm easily confused. That's not new. The confusion on this item, which I apologize to the Assembly, when the censure and sanction was lifted, it was my understanding that the relationship between the director and regional district carries over as the election isn't a hard restart. So I thought my previous alternate appointment still stands, and thus I didn't submit an alternate appointment form within the 60-day deadline. As the staff have pointed out in the staff report, once the 60-day deadline is done, you have, well, pass a board motion to appoint an alternate. You can't just sign the document. Therefore, the board needs to pass a motion for the appointment of an alternate. I'm not trying to be obstinate or anything. And there's a document that's been submitted, but my understanding is it has to be handled in camera, or at least discussed on whether it should or shouldn't be in camera, the in-camera portion. And therefore, that is all I'm going to say on that matter at this time.
Okay, is there further discussion on the motion to move this in camera? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We're now on to new business, and there is a motion here, which I provided a notice of motion at the last committee of the whole to put forward this motion. So if there is a mover and a seconder, I do have some comments for Nick about it. So. Oh, I can move it. Well, I will move it then. Is there a seconder for this recommendation?
Second.
Director Gisborne, thank you. When I looked through the housing needs report, which we've all seen, I don't know if the new directors have seen it, and if you haven't, I'm pretty sure it's easy to access on our website. It's a really telling document about the number of housing units that we are short in each electoral area, as well as the city and Tla'amin. So I think it's very concerning. We can certainly move forward in looking at what are the possible solutions. We don't necessarily know if the solution is going to be tiny houses. We don't know if the solution is going to mean OCP amendments, but this empowers staff to do the research and come back to us with a report about types, improving the number of housing units that we have. And it would include best practices of other regional districts, which types of housing have been most successful, legislation regarding affordable housing, and of course, Vancouver coastal health regulations regarding, septic systems that could restrict the number of tiny houses, for example, that could be placed on a single lot. So it's asking for information. I believe the issue is incredibly important to all of our areas. We're all in the same boat in that we all have an identified shortage of available housing. And so I hope that this will be supported and that we can receive the information and then decide the right way to move forward. So is there further discussion on this item? Director Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this. I just have a question because the motion talks about rural areas. So is it correct that this would be done through planning service? If so, would Lasqueti Island not be part of this, which would be understandable since we don't participate in the planning service? That's totally fine. That would be more the purview of the Islands Trust. And if it would include Lasqueti, would that just housing information, the previous reports? So that's the question, is how the role of Lasqueti in this.
Okay, and it's my thought that Lasqueti is included because this is being discussed at committee of the whole, but I'll ask our corporate officer to comment.
Or we could turn it over to
CAO.
Thank you. Sometimes I get neglected. Through the chair, we kind of intended this to be a all-encompassing type of review or report. So yes, Lasqueti will be included. I feel that it's really quite a social planning type of response because that's basically where the report originated from. I know that we're both short, well, we're all short, Tla'amin, ourselves, and the city, because we have a void in not having a social planner in existence right now. But we're going to try our best from our end to shore up what we believe is required in the QRD. And so everybody, basically, we're going to be touching base with all members, whether they're city and or rural.
That's great. Thank you. And that increases my support even further. I think it's good to have Lasqueti in there.
Great. Thank you, Director Paul. Have Director Gisborne, then Director Doe.
Thank you, Chair McCormick. And I'd like to also thank you for putting this notice of motion the previous month and then bringing it for the committee of the whole. For those directors that weren't at the planning committee this morning, we had a bit of a discussion about OCPs and kind of zoning. This motion, as I understand it, is more broad and all-encompassing because there are other options that are available to regional districts, such as some local governments, I think, have created services to then help different organizations, and that has nothing really to do with zoning and OCPs, and that's a completely separate issue. I like that the motion is broad enough that staff can kind of just cast a wide net and hopefully come back with a couple of things that maybe can stick. One of the things that kind of has me a little, and this is what Director Paul pointed out, is in the motion it says the current shortage of housing in rural areas, and I'm hearing from the CIO that, this is kind of a broader thing. I'm wondering if maybe it should also include the municipality, the rural areas in Lesquiti and everything, because maybe there is something there that we can even partner with the municipality to try and deal with this issue. And on those topics, I wouldn't even necessarily constrain ideas to, other areas in British Columbia. Maybe even something might pop up internationally. Something the Japanese do is apparently they make no distinction on dwellings. So whether it's one house or it's renovated internally, it can then suddenly have 8, and it just happens. So there's all kinds of different ways of dealing with housing. And the more you look into housing, you find out that these are problems that come up and disappear sometimes over thousands of years. Like the Romans had issues with housing at different times. So sometimes it seems like this is a new problem, but it comes and goes. But right now it's big. And this is going to take a lot of effort, and there is no silver bullet. It's a complicated problem, which means that in order to start fixing it, it's going to require a lot of levers and buttons to be pulled and pushed, and that's where it's kind of an all hands on deck thing. So I'm supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. And my intent in wording it the way that it is that the city has its own review of housing and what it needs to do. It has its own regulatory, framework, and it sort of does what it does, and it has full authority to do that. But there may well be applications or solutions that come out of this report that would be equally applicable to the city. So I believe that the principles or the ideas may well apply to them, or they may choose to have them apply or not, as the city so wishes, and Tla'amin as well. So that is my intent in wording it the way I have. So Director Daudt, you are next.
Yeah, and here we are at the Cathett Regional District meeting, talking about a planning issue. And I think talking about mitigating the current shortage of housing in rural areas makes a lot of sense. The idea of funding it through the social development funding source makes sense to me, because that would include Ski Island and stay rural setting. And the rural settings have their own and different considerations to take into account, with services, locations, transportation, all of those things which are different than the city. Although the city and the regional district have a similar concern with housing, the solutions may be completely different. And the city certainly is engaged in the idea of looking at how to solve housing issues in a whole bunch of different ways. But I support this resolution. I've thought about ways you could play with the wording to try to make it more clear, but I think this is fine. I think what we need to be careful of is that we take this step by step, because it could become a very expensive project depending on how far you want to go. And I think this allows staff to bring back a report that examines the whole concept and examines different ways to go forward. Thinks about how to pay for it all as we go.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in favor of the motion. It's a very prominent issue across the province and the country, actually, right now. The provincial government, the federal government, everybody's ramping up programs to help fund solutions if we can come up with them. And I also think it might be a good idea for us as a regional district to maybe touch base with the city to find out if they're going to post the position for the social planner, because we're all suffering without that position. I'm going to ask myself anyway, but it's also probably a good idea for the regional district to ask the city when they plan on filling that position. It should be moving forward, I think, post haste, given the need across the board for a social planner.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you, Director Elliott. And we made note of your comments, so that's good. Further discussion on this item? Seeing no hands. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to question period. Are there any questions of the committee?
Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I don't have any questions this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Galinsky. Is there anyone else there who might have questions? Seeing no one? Okay, so we are now moving on to the motion to go in camera. Would someone like to read this motion? Director Gisborne.
I'll go for it. I move that the committee move in camera and that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. C, labor relations or other employee relations, and N, the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
Thank you. Seconded by Elliott. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We're going in camera. There is no rise in reports, so our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Well done, everybody.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
I'll see you.